Welcome to the Secure Threat Insights weekly group discussion. We don't have a very big agenda today, so this might be a quick call. Take a look at the accomplishments. We've got a good sized list just from the last week, including one community contribution from our buddy Kev. I added a follow-up. So this was an item that we were looking at for planning breakdown last week, and I kind of just moved it up into the discussion area. You know, given that Tiago and Neil aren't here right now, I know that, Tiago's created an epic and has started to think about how we're going to take this POC that James has created and break it down and start to make it production ready and integrate it into our code. I've been talking to Neil a little bit about his front end group and Secure taking some amount of that work, since it's a big blocker for things like them displaying the fuzz testing results. I think that's the first immediate benefit that we get from that generic schema that would allow us to style things on the vulnerability details page. But I didn't want to leave this conversation kind of hanging from last week. So Alexander, I don't know if you've had a chance. I know you've been really busy looking at other things and we don't have Mehmet here, but when we talked last week, the two of you were going to take a look at this from a front end and back end perspective and ask some questions and to kind of provide your feedback on how you thought it would make sense to approach this integration. Do you have any thoughts on it?
No, unfortunately, I did not get a chance to look at this past week, but I will for next week.
And I think that's probably, like I said, I think that's okay, given what I just said in the preface. We're still sort of trying to figure out from a high level. Matt, I'm also still unclear from you around priority in regards to some of the other items that we have upcoming with the MR widget and, some of the other things that we are looking at that are in design. So I'm not trying to ask you to answer that right now, but I think we're a little, this is a weird one because planning breakdown on a POC is different than planning breakdown on a design issue or a new feature request. And we've never quite been through this. So we don't have a set of instructions to follow here. So I think we're kind of putting that together as we go right now.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to the priority on this one. I agree it's a little weird because it wasn't something that I even had on my radar, and James just sort of introduced a thing that was like, oh, that's super cool. Let's steal that. I actually think this fits really well with the existing plan to do a lot of sort of backing work on data. I don't know, integrity is probably not the right word or a fair word, but making sure that the results that we're seeing throughout the process are consistent and we're able to sort of scale that out. So I would say that this is very much in line with that. It's not quite originally where that was targeted. But that was a terrible way to say I would consider this part of an existing plan on the roadmap piece. So that's where this would go. And I would see this kind of extending through the end of the year. I don't know if it'll take that long, but this is going to be a really crucial piece of work as we look to integrate a lot of additional third-party scanners and start trying to normalize stuff so we're not doing everything 6 times with slight variances for our internal scanners as well. I have no idea about the POC aspect of it. That does seem different.
And the thing that I keep getting hung up on, and what you just said reminded me of that, is that POC really encapsulates 2 big areas of improvements. One is what I think Matt was speaking directly to just now, which is the fingerprinting. So looking at whether this is something we've already seen before, or if it's new, or if it's been moved, or some of those improvements around the data. And then the second big piece is taking sort of a dynamic JSON or a generic JSON scan result and formatting the data associated with that in the vulnerability detail page in such a way that we can, put it on the scanner owners to be able to dictate what that looks like. So I will take some time, and maybe this is something that we don't bring back to this agenda until we have a better plan, but I don't want people to lose sight of it. So any other, go ahead.
Lose sight of what?
I see what you did there. Any other questions or comments or thoughts on this generic security report schema topic?
Matt, was this the related to the MR you just sent me, where we kind of want an understanding of these stylized parts of the vulnerability?
Yes. So that is Lindsay's point number 2, the dynamic display of the scan results. So the way that it can be both dynamic and on the scanner team to communicate that is by having defined stylings for the specific field types. So we've got the predefined field types in that MR that I shared. It is a little, if anyone's kind of dug deep, it's a little squirrely. It's kind of a mix of issues and MRs, and some of the MRs are superseded by subsequent MRs. So you have to sort of dig around in there. But yes, that's the front end piece, is rendering things like URLs or a diff block, or even having, you know, GitLab flavored markdown as a content type for a field, so that we're just sort of pasting those in order on the screen and not having to do scanner specific logic when they start wanting to add some of these more complex output structures.
Right on. Do we want to just create a design issue then and just kind of treat that as that starting point for this? Would that be helpful?
Probably. I don't know, Lindsay, let's see, front end team.
So I think that's a great idea. It would put it back in line with our process, and we'd still have the benefit of the code that James has taken the time to build and into that POC. Alexander, Savash, do you guys agree with that? So
yeah, sounds great. Because I think it'd be a great place for the conversation to happen.
And it would be a way to separate these two topics, right? So you're talking about creating a design issue around that dynamic display from the vulnerability details page. Then I don't know if it also makes sense to have a design issue per se for the fingerprinting. I know we have done design issues that are not like UX design issues, but like technical solution design issues. I think we should talk to Tiago about that. So, but something that represents each one of these two sides of this POC that we could put into our regular process would definitely make this easier to move forward with.
Okay, yeah, I can craft that design issue. I may even just create an issue from that MR that was initiated that might help keep everything together. If that's important. Okay.
Keeping everything together, I get a little worried about. I want to create a distinct divide between the fingerprinting and the display of the data. So
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Wayne, do you want to? I was looking at the issue that you shared, and I'm not quite sure where the context connection is. So I'll let you verbalize it.
And so just one of the issues that came out of dog fooding, it's great, we're finding issues via dog fooding because that means dog fooding is working, we're really trying to use things, was just this deduplication issue. Just as we think about the report scheme, and think about how we can make it possible, and if possible, easy to deduplicate results. So not recreate the same result multiple times in different ways, either in the same scan or across different scans. So just something to keep in mind. It's more tangential.
Cool. Thanks, Wayne. Andy's been busy crafting design issues. This is an early look, so I didn't put it in planning breakdown. And I don't know if anyone's actually had a chance to look at it very much because I just added this to the agenda yesterday. I think Andy just brought this to our attention yesterday. So this is a design issue around manually creating vulnerabilities. And I wanted to make sure that we got feedback to Andy early on. Andy, how close are you to planning breakdown for this? Are you still in user testing and such?
I think a lot of comments have started trickling in from the AppSec team. I pinged them in Slack to give this a look over. But I think everyone, if you can and have time, just give it a look again and throw comments in. I think I would like to have this done by the end of the milestones, kind of, or at least like before kickoff, usually like maybe even up to a day before the next kickoff. So probably a week.
And Matt, where is this falling as far as our upcoming work goes? I know we've got the MR widget redesign starting next iteration, ideally. Would this fall after that?
Yes, I think this would fall after that work, or at least in parallel towards the back end of it.
Great. So I don't know if we need to take time unless if anyone's had a chance to look at it and wants to ask any questions of Andy today. I think this is more of a on your own time All right. Pause for comments, questions, other topics for previous discussions before we move down to the demo. All right. New style and vulnerability details page. Savash, I think Alexander's reporting for you. That's how I'm reading this right here.
He got the MR merged, the second one. Then I also realized that there were a couple of, so the solution section was missing. I overlooked that, so started to work on that today. I submitted the MR, but it's still under review.
Missing is in the new styles weren't there yet, or missing is it wasn't being displayed anymore? Sorry.
So I just overlooked it. I didn't see that the solution parts was different. So had to restyle that part as well. So created another MR for that. And also the result button, I also created an MR for that today. It has a different background now. I think I assigned Andy for review for both of them. So yeah, that's the update. And thanks, Alexander, for jumping in.
That's a great opportunity to remind everyone that anytime you are changing something that touches the UX, we should be adding Andy and getting a UX review before it goes, I'd say before it goes to review, so that if he has any feedback, we're not asking people to re-review. Okay. And we have one issue for planning breakdown today, which is bringing the group and instance reports in line with what we have for the project level. So adding these severity counters at the top of the vulnerability list page, not the dashboard. So remembering that we're doing planning breakdown, our questions for planning breakdown are, well, first of all, did everyone have a chance to look at this? I see a thumbs up, so I'm moving forward. Are the requirements clear enough to understand the intent of the request? Seems like a very clear issue. Dependencies of work to be accomplished. It seems like it's all within our group. And my question is there back end and front end work here? Do we already have the data available on the front end, or will there be some API work?
I think it requires back-end work.
Okay.
But I'm not completely sure. Alexander, can you confirm?
Oh, I was just gonna say that's a refinement question, so I don't know.
Okay.
But I agree with Savash. There's probably gonna be some back-end work.
So it'd be a refinement question, but I don't know if we need to create a front end and back end issue to refine. So we're kind of in that place where with this one, if we're doing planning breakdown, it would be great to be able to just decide what the breakdown is. Do we need more than one issue for this? If there's back end work, that would imply that there would be. I could just have that we could just refine this issue as a front end issue, and then the back end work could come up based on that, which is what Tiago's always kind of encouraging.
Yeah, I mean, I'm cool with like saying that it's all front end work until like we need to say, hey, okay, we do need a back end, route added in there.
Okay.
And create a separate issue on that one.
Sounds good.
We can prioritize it as needed.
So we'll answer these planning breakdown questions. We'll put this into refinement as a front end issue. We'll let that front end refinement expose whether there's a back end issue needed or not, and we'll create that back end issue based on that. Cool. Go ahead.
Sorry, Lindsay. It requires backend work. Just checked it now. The query, and but on the front end part, it should be little work. Just past because we already have the component. We just need to refactor that a bit.
Okay. So it sounds like based on what you're saying, it's small enough to fit into one iteration.
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably.
It sounds like by all measures, this issue has passed planning breakdown. We'll move it into refinement. Based on what Savas just said, it needs a back-end issue. I can take the action of getting that created, and we're good.
So one of the, I added the end. So Mo, it's great to see you here. How does this team operate differently from your team? Anything you'd recommend we do differently or additionally?
I don't know that I'd have any recommendation at this point. I'm here to observe and learn and just see how discussion and collaboration happens. And so far, I'm really impressed. Lindsay, you're in charge in terms of making sure people speak up, and I love that. I see that there was a portion of the meeting dedicated to the demo, and honestly, I miss that. One thing that I'm seeing is there was some discussion about front end, back end. I'd love to see front end and back end on the same call. I don't know if that is true or not in this case. I don't know what everyone's title is, but that's just one thing. Otherwise, I'm just loving this call. Sorry for interrupting.
Oh, no. Always happy to have anybody who wants to. So thanks for the ideas. And this is actually a combination of front end and back end folks.
Okay, yes.
Front end, back end, designer, and product manager.
That's exactly the kind of meeting I want to be in. You can actually hear everyone else's concerns and work together, as opposed to making assumptions and speculating from the other's perspective. So.
I wish I could say we always have this number of people and so well distributed across various things. This is probably the most people we've had in a meeting, in one of these meetings in a while, but in a good way. I don't know. We tend to have more like 5 people or 6 people, not 8. But still neat. Yeah. Glad to have everybody here who could make it.
It can be difficult sometimes, but thanks for showing up for me, everyone. I appreciate that.
We heard you were coming, Mal. We wouldn't miss it for the world.
Thank you.
Okay, we're at the end of our agenda. Does anyone have topics or questions or things they forgot? No.
Yes.
All right. Go ahead.
Apologize. My username, for some reason, it changed. I updated it, so now it's Savaş Vedova and then the title. So apologies for that again.
You mean the Zoom one? I find that mine sometimes just magically disappears for no reason, and I think it's a sign-in thing. Yeah. Now that we know who you are, Savaş, we can end the call.
Nice to meet you, Savaş.
Your hair looks great too. Can you do it one more time for us? Can you do it again? Yeah, on video. Woo!
Nice move. Saw that too. That works out well for you.
I'll practice.
You feel the wind in your scalp? All right. We're going to call it. Thanks, everyone.